Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Grant and Joe Hoyt. Joe's here to talk about the Cowboys and some of the ongoing crazy stuff that goes on with them. Crazy enough that they came close to winning that game against the Eagles. I had them 35-17 losing, Joe. What did you have in that game?
I had them 35-31, actually. And I just kept kind of coming back to this idea where I thought that they were too talented to, get blown out, but not good enough to win. But I'll be honest, I kind of walked away from that game even more impressed about specifically Brian Schottenheimer, because if you kind of look at preseason, I did not think it was good. I thought there was a lot of red flags in terms of what they were doing, but he kind of kept saying, hey, this is a 7-iron offense. I'm keeping all my clubs in the bag, and I'm going to keep it very vanilla. And I just kind of, the cynic in me thought, like, man, that kind of sounds like an excuse, frankly. He was right, though. There was some Baskin-Robbins type flavors out there. I thought they did a lot of motion. They had a lot of sprinkles on that thing. And I think that was probably the most encouraging thing, is that the words of Brian Schottenheimer kind of actually lined up with what we saw.
The Baskin-Robbins offense. Maybe we should go with that. How about that, huh? We'll think about it. Yeah, they were, I think, and I was kind of watching the game with my sons, and one of the things that they were talking about was they just felt like what made all the difference to them was Dak and how well he played in that game. And of course, that's the funny thing. We've complained, and Tim Cowlishaw really complains about him not playing in the preseason. And, Calvin had sent me the stats about what Dak has done in preseason when he hasn't played. And really, it never seems to bother him, not playing at all. And he proved it again this year, comes out and was really on point. And he also, I think maybe losing a little weight and has helped him a little bit. He got away on a couple of plays. And, that's kind of the thing. The Cowboys don't need him to be Jalen Hurts. They just need him to be able to get out of trouble every once in a while and make a play. And he did all of that.
Yeah, mobility comes in different, versions, right? And I think one of the kind of more interesting things I'm actually writing about this week, it was something that was kind of slipped in the day of the game, and it was Mike McCarthy on Pat McAfee. And one thing Mike McCarthy said was, hey, after Dak signs his mega deal, we kind of went into protection mode, and we didn't want him to run. And I thought that was evident last year. Dak looked unwilling to run. Like, he looked restricted.
Sure.
And ultimately, when, he kind of got pressed on it, he decided to run a lot in Atlanta. And, now when you're in your 30s, this has happened to me before, where you try to go run and you haven't ran in a while, you're going to pull something. And that's kind of what happened with Dak. And I think that running this offseason was such a huge emphasis for him. Jake Ferguson called him the Slim Reaper because of how great a shape he's been in. And I think it was evident in that game. The Cowboys offensive line, allowed 11 pressures, which is a good amount of pressures. But the fact that there was no sacks allowed, I think, is telling, because of Dak was getting the ball out quickly. And when he wasn't able to get the ball out quickly, he was able to move around and kind of make things happen. I thought that was one of Dak Prescott's better games. And the two X factors I thought kind of coming into this season, the biggest, potential catalyst for this Cowboys team was Dak Prescott's performance, whether he could be 2023 Dak, that MVP runner-up kind of caliber guy, who had a full offseason with CeeDee Lamb and watched them work. And then I thought Tyler Guyton was the biggest other X factor. Could Tyler Guyton simply be serviceable? If he could be serviceable, I thought that this offense could actually have a chance to be full. I thought Tyler Guyton was better than serviceable. He wasn't fantastic. He allowed a team-high 5 pressures, but they also weren't detrimental pressures. I don't think that they were, hey, Ole, swing and a miss, and here comes a guy free-willing. I thought Tyler Guyton showed a significant amount of improvement from where he was in his rookie season, which is telling because he didn't have a lot of this offseason, a lot of training camp to get ready for this game.
This all sounds very encouraging, but again, I mean, how much of what you're saying, Joe, related to Dak moving, and Kevin and I have talked for a couple of years, like that he's a much more dangerous quarterback when he's mobile, and I agree with all of that. And how much of the offensive line play do we have to hedge against the fact that the Eagles' best defensive player didn't play?
Good question. I do think Jalen Carter is obviously a monster, right? But I think in terms of where Jalen Carter would have matched up against this offensive line, that's not where the Cowboys are weak, right? Like they are not weak in the interior. I think that's probably their better thing. Tyler Smith, Tyler Booker, and Cooper Beebe. Like, and even though Tyler Booker's a rookie, I still would have a lot of confidence, frankly, about how he would hold up against Jalen Carter. For a duration of a game. Would there be losses in there? Sure. But I think your tackles were where your major concerns were, right? Terrence Steele and Tyler Guyton last year. Um, there were points where they were just a liability. There were points where they were turnstiles, frankly. And the fact that they did just enough, I thought, on the edge was very, very encouraging for this team. And I do think there's a couple of things that in terms of hedging and being a little cynical, I think we got to consider. One, the Cowboys had a lot of time to prepare for this game specifically. This was an opponent that they knew for a long time was on the radar. They could do a whole offseason scripting plays specifically to stop this Eagles pass rush and kind of go up against them. And the other thing I think I kind of want to see this weekend, the Giants are not a very good overall team. Their pass rush is going to be one of the best in the NFL this season, though. I think they have multiple guys all across the defensive line that can kind of wreak havoc. There's not a real weak spot on their defensive line. A lot of high-end talent. I think if the Cowboys can do what they did last week, again this week, if Dak could also be mobile kind of against that front, I think that kind of adds more encouragement about what they could do for the remainder of the season in terms of kind of combating what a potential pass rush could do.
Before we get on to the Giants, I do want to ask a couple of things. One of the things that came up, I guess, in Jay Glazer's reporting for Fox Sports was that the other deal that the Cowboys were considering was one from the Eagles for Micah Parsons, in which they would have gotten 2 firsts, a third, a fifth, and other things. That was in quotes. We weren't sure what I would assume that meant veteran player or players involved, which is certainly a better deal than what they got from the Packers. But my gosh, even Jerry Jones was smart enough to realize I can't trade Micah Parsons within the division. It's bad enough to trade him to the Packers, which is, another team in your conference. But within the division, it would have just been unbelievable. But it also tells you what a guy like Howie Roseman, who, as Evan knows, is my favorite GM, thinks of the abilities of Micah Parsons, that's what he was willing to give up for him. Because that is the mother lode. I mean, as much as I, love Parsons as a player, if I could get a 2 firsts, a third, a fifth, and then a couple of veteran players, well, then I probably got to do that.
Yeah, and then the Cowboys were never going to trade him to an NFC East team. Barring 4 first-round picks and, a deal that maybe the Mavs should have got for Luka Doncic kind of style, right? But no, that was never a real consideration. I even think the fact that they traded him to an NFC team, an NFC contender at that, kind of tells you what the chum in the water when they threw it in there, how many sharks were kind of in there. I don't think there were many in terms of offering something that would be decent enough for them to kind of say, okay, this is okay now, and we'll kind of set ourselves up for the future while saving money. But to your point, Howie Roseman, I'm always impressed by him, and I think he's kind of got that Midas touch right now where he makes a lot of moves, and maybe it's more of a kind of trips to the plate thing at this point, and his batting average is doing okay because he traded for Tank Bigsby last night. Will Shipley gets hurt, their backup running back. They immediately say, hey, we need not only a backup running back but a kick returner to kind of help with these new kickoff rules, and boom, they go get Tank Bigsby from the Jaguars. And I think someone I forgot who said it, but the Cowboys really prioritize themselves or kind of claim that they're this 365-day a year at player acquisition team, like that's their approach. Well, Howie Roseman lives up to it. Howie Roseman is a guy that's constantly thinking, constantly moving pieces around, constantly trying to find how he can best utilize his assets. And I think even the fact that he offered something for Micah Parsons kind of tells you where they're at with that.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, as you said, it's a lot of at bats. So he's made moves that didn't work out. But it's as a fan, you have to look at it like, if my GM is going out there and trying, and he's right more often than not, oh, this is the guy you want, right? This is the Dave Dombrowski model, and what basically Chris Young is trying to model himself after as well. The Cowboys have been an organization for the last, I don't know, seems like 6 or 7 years, it kind of prided itself on, no, we're going to draft and develop, and of course that's good as long as you keep those guys if they're really good, which they didn't do in the case of Micah Parsons. So, and also something came up on the radio show as we're taping this on Tuesday morning, where Jerry said that he would. Well, I guess you should just fill us in on exactly what Jerry said, Joe.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of conversations in the fallout of the Micah Parsons deal is whether Jerry Jones's approach to this was actually, legal according to CBA laws in terms of, hey, Micah Parsons, come, let's talk. Let me close the door. It's you and me, mano a mano, and then, oh, by the way, we should have had an agreement there, because anyone who knows Jerry Jones knows that's been kind of a way to do it for a long time for him. Obviously, you get other people involved. You get your salary cap guy and Adam Pacifica involved. Stephen Jones gets involved. They deal with agents all the time, right? But Jerry Jones has kind of made it clear, I want to deal with player directly, and I want to see the look in his eyes when I move off my mark. That's one thing Jerry has said. I want to see the look in his eyes when I say, you know what, I am going to give you money, life-changing money that you've never had before. That's going to be me. And if I'm doing that, then I should be the one dealing with this directly, not, non-authoritative people is kind of the way he does it. There's been questions in the NFL community about whether or not there is legality to that according to the CBA. Kind of what I've found through my research is that there's surely some gray area. I think, the NFLPA and David Mulugeta actually alluded to this. I think they will look into it, whether or not there is some type of course of action they can to kind of mandate that players have representation alongside them whenever they're in an active negotiation thing, kind of similar to almost HR representatives in terms of talking with bosses at a common workplace. Right now, I don't think that there's a path there. But, anything with legal stuff, it depends how you word it, how you frame it. Right now, Jerry Jones said on the radio today, there is no violation in his mind. He believes he's adamant about that. And he said if he was ever fined for the way he does negotiations with players, that he would take that fine number, times it by 100, and donate all of that money to the Salvation Army. Kind of telling a little bit of exactly how Jerry Jones thinks about where that type of investigation could go.
Just one quick addendum to that. Jerry Jones is a liar. So,
Wow.
He admitted as much during the whole Parsons press conference that
literally,
he will lie and, manipulate the truth to whatever his needs are. So again, I take everything that Jerry says and I no longer believe it. He has reduced his credibility to below zero with me.
Yeah, I mean, he even said it because he was talking specifically about how he went on Stephen A. Smith and said, "Oh, I'm not trading Micah Parsons,"
Correct.
And he's like, "Oh, I was lying to him and I was lying to you guys." By the way, thank you for writing that. Yeah. So he understands the game. To Evan's point.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why anybody would trust Jerry about anything, I don't know. But anyway, so Micah Parsons, after not playing at all in the preseason either, comes out and plays 29, 30 snaps for the Packers, has a sack, I think, 3 pressures besides that maybe? And on those 3 pressures that I saw, that was like they resulted in an interception, I think a completion for minus yardage and a stop or something like that. So he made a real impact in that first game and kind of let the Packers serve notice that they might be, maybe they're the next team up in the NFC.
I think that there's a good argument for it, especially when you kind of look around the rest of the NFC North. I think there's a real question, frankly, about the Lions in terms of, hey, you lost your offensive guru and your defensive guru. You're trying to replace that. How does that go? Week 1, I didn't think it looked great. But I think, it's so funny because the Cowboys have been so adamant that the trade for Micah Parsons doesn't happen without Kenny Clark. And I thought Kenny Clark played really well in his debut, which is not easy considering, it's a week off or a week later you got to play after having a big trade. You've been with the Packers your whole career. I thought he played really well. But they've been adamant that he was the key piece for them actually making this deal and that they're better now and better in the future than they would be if they had Micah Parsons on the books. The better now thing, to be honest with you, and all the respect to Kenny Clark in the world, I don't know how you can watch him against the Lions this weekend, what Micah Parsons did against Green Bay, and think that the Cowboys are better off now than they were before that trade. Micah Parsons even if he's a third down pass rusher, which is kind of what he was doing, he's elite. He's the way he bended back on that sack. There are few humans in the world that can do what Micah Parsons can do in terms of pursuing a quarterback. I think, the Cowboys, I think in terms of going against the run, played really well against the Eagles. There will be points in this season, though, and I even wrote about this, where you're wondering when Jalen Hurts is running around, man, what would Micah Parsons do in that situation? There's going to be moments like that often. And, it's funny because a lot of fans are saying, hey, let's move on. We don't want to talk about it. Sam Williams says, I don't even want to talk about Micah Parsons questions anymore, so please stop asking him. I just think that's going to be a theme that hangs over this team for the rest of the season.
You can't move on from that stuff. It's like I did have a few fans after Luka was traded saying, "Oh, can we just move on from that?" And I said, "We haven't even gotten through the whole rest of the season yet. I mean, and then you got to deal with the next season. No, we're not going to stop talking about this.
But
this will go on for at least a year."
That's just fans being emotional. I mean, that's why fans are fans. They're emotional, and the bottom line is that Parsons and the lack of Parsons and the return on Parsons is going to continue to be a story. You can't just talk about you can't just talk about big trades when they work. We in this town have quoted the Herschel Walker trade for 35 years now?
Yeah.
35.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the Vikings don't like to talk about the Herschel Walker trade. So that's what the Cowboys are going to have to deal with. The players, the front office, and their fans. And to that point, I mean, Joe, based on the way the Cowboys played, which I thought, again, was better than I expected, if Parsons is on the field, do they contain Hurts better, and do they potentially win that game?
I think they do contain Hurts better, because I also think that the way that the Cowboys were planning to use use Parsons, I think would have been a little bit more versatile than, just saying, hey, go line up at edge rusher and kind of come off the line and go think. I wouldn't be surprised if they used him a little off ball and used him as a spy, frankly, on Jalen Hurts. Say, all right, Jalen, you want to kind of sit back there and, think where your escape route is? Well, there is no escape route if Micah Parsons, a lion is lined up across from you. So I to your point, I think that depending on how they would have used him, and I know that they already had plans to use him a little bit differently, I think that there was a good chance that the Cowboys would have contained Jalen Hurts better, and if they do, they might win that game. And if CeeDee Lamb catches some passes there in the fourth quarter, they might win the game. If Jake Ferguson catches the ball, over the middle that he normally catches, they might win that game. Overall, they were in position to know, and I do find that somewhat encouraging in terms of the rest of the season.
Yeah, I got to tell you one last thing about Jalen Hurts. And with all due respect to him, and I think he's really good at what he does. But when he gets loose like that, it's not like he's juking and getting around people. He just starts running. There's nobody there. Because everybody's trying to take away his receivers, right, and try to make him and force him to do that. But when you do that, you've also got to maintain your rush lanes and all that, and keep him from just taking off, because it's ridiculous. And to your point about using Micah as a spy, yeah, absolutely, that's what you do. I put Micah. Jalen Hurts is the most dangerous guy on their offense, right? So that's the guy you have to stop first. It seems pretty simple to me. All right, let's talk about the
DeMarvion Overshown, by the way, would be that guy, I think, in the future too, if he's healthy.
Oh, you're right. No question about that. And he's faster than Micah is. He's really fast. All right, let's talk about the Giants in a little bit of time we got left here. What should we expect? Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback, because there was a question about that.
Yeah, he will be the starting quarterback, but I think the Cowboys are going to prepare for Jackson Dart as well. And I think the Cowboys have a leg up in terms of preparing for Russell Wilson. Obviously, this is a guy that he's been in the league for a long time. There's a lot of film on him, but perhaps no one in terms of opponents knows him as well as maybe Brian Schottenheimer does. This is a guy that was his play caller, and not only was his play caller, 5 years ago, but that's when Russell started to kind of tear off a little bit in terms of his escapability. I think Brian Schottenheimer knows Russell Wilson extremely well. I think that'll help. Jackson Dart's a little bit more of an unknown, but when you kind of think about what Russell Wilson does well, Jackson Dart has similar things to him. I think that he also is a really good deep ball thrower. I think he is a little bit mobile in terms of his escapability. I think they're actually similar evaluations. They're different, in terms of their bodies and kind of a little bit in details and how fast and maybe how tall they are. But I actually think the evaluations are pretty similar, which should kind of help in terms of what the Cowboys are going to be doing in terms of scouting against the Giants. I think when it comes to the Giants, the two things you got to worry about are the pass rush and then Malik Neighbors specifically. They might target Malik Neighbors 15 times this game, 16 times. I'm very curious to see whether or not the Cowboys have someone that travels with Malik Neighbors. One of the takeaways from that first game against the Eagles, the Cowboys ran no man coverage, zero. They ran zone coverage the entire time, and they said, "Hey, we're going to use our corners, our athletic corners, to try and beat you that way." It worked out well against the Eagles, I thought. I don't know if that works out well against Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I don't know how well Malik Neighbors is going to work out in New York. He was already fussing with everybody on the sideline in that game in their opener. That's a mess. How Brian Daboll got to come back as the coach of the Giants is just beyond me to begin with. That just, I think there was some speculation maybe the Cowboys would be even worse than the Giants, and I think the answer is no. No one in this division is worse than the Giants, and that'll be the same for the foreseeable future. But you're right about they do have a great defensive line, and that pass rush will be a question mark for the Cowboys. And that's the other thing about Tyler Guyton. When have the Cowboys had questions at left tackle? They went a long time with Tyron Smith over there. That was never a question. And so when you get used to that kind of performance, when the next guy up is just okay or just average at best, then that's a considerable difference. And that'll be something hard for people to deal with. And that will require, Dak to do a good job of avoiding that pressure. And at least now he seems willing to try to do that. So it's all good. So who we saying in this game, Joe?
Oh, I'm going Cowboys. I think the only path to a Giants win is the pass rush getting home many times, frankly. And I just don't see the volume in which that would be required to win happening. I think that the Cowboys, in a home opener, I think that they kind of get out early, can kind of, get the run game going. I liked what I saw from Javonte Williams. That's another guy that kind of went unheralded. That was a bit of a mystery. I thought he did well. So I just don't see the Giants having enough talent overall or enough quarterback play, frankly, to kind of pull this one out. Give me the Cowboys and Dak Prescott going 1-1 and kind of setting up an interesting game in week 3 against the Chicago team that really kind of blew one last night, I thought. And, shout out to JJ McCarthy, too, for that roller coaster. So,
yeah, no kidding. Early on, that looked like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the Bears are really this good. I'm not buying the Bears. I just can't buy the Bears yet. I'll give them some time here. They need a little more than what they've had so far. Yeah, give me the Cowboys in this one. I'll say, what do I say? 28-17 is what I'll say.
I like that. I think a double-digit gap is in play.
Yeah. Okay. Evan, what do you have on the Cowboys and the Giants?
I'm still not as sold, so I'm going to go that they'll win by a touchdown.
Okay. All right.
I do think, sorry, one more note on that, because I think Evans is really right in terms of, hey, I think there's so much buildup to that first game, and Brian Schottenheimer, I think, is going to be an elite scripter in terms of how he scripts plays. And I think there's no better opportunity to script plays than in that week 1 game against a team that really, really well. I'm very curious to see when things not only get out of that week 1 game, but when they get out of the NFC East in terms of how they script, how they prepare. I think that's going to be another question mark / test for Brian Schottenheimer.
Sure. And I think week 1 is always kind of it's a hodgepodge. You just don't know what you're going to get, especially as teams don't show much in preseason and players don't play in preseason. It's completely, I think it's unpredictable. And I'm still just not sold on this Cowboys team. But I really did like what I saw from Dak last week. And the running game was better than I expected. I just think it's still going to take this team some time to really kind of get its footing.
Well, you don't have to be sold on the Cowboys. I'm not sold on the Cowboys. I'm just sold that the Giants suck. So that's the thing for this week. So we'll see what they do after this week. But this week they get well. All right, that's going to do it for the Cowboys segment of our podcast. Thanks, Joe, for visiting with us, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks probably. Well, here we are as we take this on Monday. The Rangers have won the first. Well, I guess you say it was Michael Hellman 5, Brewers 0 in the opener of that 3-game series. They're playing some of the best teams in baseball over this stretch, and they will continue to do so. Playoff bound teams, or at least teams trying to get in the playoffs or close to it. And they continue to play well, Evan. I mean, what the heck about this team anyway?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that seems to be inexplicable about this team, but they are playing with a looseness right now that is clearly evident. And I think we talked a little bit about this last week. It's hard to tell. Did the looseness happen first, or did the success happen? But the two go hand in hand. There are guys that I think the best thing for me, or the best way to put this, and of course last night Michael Hellman hit a grand slam. It was first grand slam by a Ranger this year, and you did not have that on your bingo card. But
and then a run scoring double.
But the thing for me is, like, going back to last week and the extra inning win against Arizona, Cody Freeman had a great 2-strike approach. Didn't try to do too much. You get into the games against Houston, and again, you kind of semi-manufacture at least one run there. I just feel like the 2-strike approach, the elements of what amount to small ball or old school baseball are a little bit more evident with this team right now. And that's what it's going to take for this lineup to win.
Well, when you get great pitching, that's the thing. That's the big sin of this season, right? If they don't advance to the playoffs, is that you got the best starting pitching and you got really good relief pitching as well, probably in Rangers history.
Kevin, this is, right now as we tape this, their rotation ERA is 3.29. And just going back to 2000, looking at the American League teams, because at that point in time the national teams were still facing the pitcher. There have been 2 teams, both of them Houston teams, that for 162 games had a lower ERA. So this is one of the best rotation performances in the American League in this century.
Yeah, and if you spoil that, after you waste that, well then, my gosh, that's awful. And to your point, if you're playing small ball, obviously you're not going to score 7 runs a night if you're playing small ball. But if your rotation's giving up 2 or 3 runs a game, then you only have to score 4. And so that's what was incumbent upon them to do that. And of course, we've talked about that ad infinitum about all the the swinging from their heels and stuff. And I will say that one of the things I've noticed about Josh Young now, and certainly last night, and one of the at bats in particular, he ended up just grounding out, but he grounded out to the right side, and on balls on the outer corner of the plate, he was simply trying to hit the ball, either foul it off or hit it to the right side, which is exactly what you have to do in that situation, because if you try to pull that ball, all you're going to do is roll over on it. And to me, that's progress. That's progress. Of course, he has been playing or hitting much better. As we know, the numbers show that. But it shows so much in the approach. And then you and I, of course, have talked about Cody Freeman and his willingness to do that. And he is hard to strike out, and it will go the other way. On the home run, the grand slam by Michael Hellman, if you look at that, there is so much of the Rangers when they, even in 2023, where they were swinging from the heels and it was all working, right? And on the home run that Michael Hellman hit, his hands are so high, that's what they teach you, is try to keep your hands up above the ball in that. And it looks like he's just serving the ball as he's hitting it, even though that was a line drive and a pretty good shot out to left field. But it was a very fundamental swing for a home run. It wasn't something like it looked like, look at this, I'm just going to, give it everything I've got here. And
he was trying to get the ball. He was just trying to get the ball in the air. He was trying to get the run home. He He was not trying to hit a home run. He was not trying to drive the ball. He was trying to get the ball in the air, make contact, get the ball lifted up in the air. That was it.
Yeah. And so they're doing that now. And I got to tell you, I don't know what's going to happen now. Of course, with this team is Sean McFarland wrote today, the only thing predictable about this team is its unpredictability. And so we don't know where they're going to go from here and what they're going to do on the road, and because they haven't played well on the road this year. But I've just decided, Evan, that we should just take this as it comes. Whatever happens, at least they are playing meaningful games in September. And I think been times this summer where either one of us thought, no, that's not even going to be possible.
100%. And on this homestand now, as we tape this, they've won 3 out of 4 against the American League West leader and the team with the best record in baseball. So those are significant accomplishments for a team lacking four major components of its lineup. I think there's so many factors, Kevin, in why this team is playing better now. I also don't want to diminish the idea that without Seager and Simeon on the field, there's not a clear-cut leader or a guy that the team looks to be the guy, right? And I think that's helped Wyatt Langford. I don't want to say establish himself, because I think he's already established himself as a pretty good ball player, but I think more eyes are on Wyatt Langford. And I think it's been very clear to me that Wyatt is going to be the future of this team, or the future personality of this team. And I think that's promising. I really do.
Well, then tell me what it is about Wyatt's personality that you like.
Well, I'm talking about personality on the field. This is just he's an intense guy on the field. He is going full speed at all times. He tries to make things happen on the bases. He is he's willing to take a walk. He's not just wanting to go up there and swing from his heels. He knows that there are other elements of the game, and I think that's what I think that there's going to be some turn of the ship of Major League Baseball more towards guys who are willing to do what it takes to make contact and put the ball in play. I think hopefully the 3 true outcomes era is going to be on the downside, and I think he's going to be a very valuable player in that regard.
It's an interesting thing you bring that up, because, and we all know this. I have this same thing myself. I came up as a columnist, not on the heels of, but in the Blackie Sherrod era, and then the Randy Galloway era. And when you are doing that, it's like, gosh, I don't really feel like I can branch out and say this and do this and have this kind of voice and do whatever I really want to do. That's just part of my personality. I just, I'm very deferential to people who are really good at what they do. And so that's difficult. And I think that the same thing for a Wyatt Langford is that, I got Corey Seager here. This guy's a potential Hall of Famer. I gotta defer to him. I gotta let him be who he is. And the interesting thing about that is that I think Corey Seager would be just fine with Wyatt Langford being the center of this team. We know that because he was that way with Adolis, right? He loves Adolis. Loves the personality.
I agree. I mean, Corey wants to go out there. I'm trying to come up with the right words. I mean, he's an artist when it comes to understanding his at bats and his bat control and all of that. But I do think that, Corey is so focused on what he can do to help the team in his way that it's hard to replicate. Let's just put it that way. It's hard to replicate. Wyatt is a guy who, he's got mad skills. There's no doubt about that. But if you're summing him up, he's a guy who plays hard all the time. And that's visible. And I think that that is something that's easier for players to grasp.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's more like one of them. a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. Although, as you said, he does have that's quite a package there. When everything's working for Wyatt Langford, that's quite a package. In his own way, if he were to be able to tap into all of that, he'd be a better player than Corey Seager is, in my mind, because of his ability as a two-way threat. And you factor in the speed as well. Corey's not running away from anybody.
I'm not going to say that at this point because Corey Seager is, probably on the fringe of being a Hall of Fame talent, and that's a high bar.
It is a high bar,
but if we're in a different way.
Yeah, it is, but I'm just saying, to me, the top end for Wyatt Langford is 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases, a guy playing maybe not Gold Glove level defense, but close to it.
The top end for Wyatt Langford, the comp is always, well, could this guy be a Mike Trout? Well, that's unfair again to compare him to a Hall of Famer. But
I will say this right now: he's not going to be Mike Trout. Mike Trout was Mike Trout from the day he walked onto a Major League Baseball field, and Mike Trout is the closest thing to Mickey Mantle that since in the last 50 years. So he's not going to be that. But if he's 2/3 of Mike Trout, well then, hey, that's really great.
That would be Mike Trout.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Mike Guppy. Mike Guppy is what you got to go there.
Mike Tro?
No, something.
Okay.
So anyway, it's very promising for the Rangers now. So look, give us an idea here on people coming back here. We've got Tyler Mahle, who is already made a couple of appearances.
Here's the rundown. Mahle should be back this weekend. I think there's going to be some question about exactly how the Rangers use him. He could go into the rotation and replace Jake Latz. If Latz is more needed in the bullpen, but look, Jake Latz has pitched really well as a starter. I think there's certainly a possibility that those guys kind of piggyback the first couple of times out.
Let me ask you this real quick before you go any further because of Jake Latz. I'm a big fan of Latz. Is there any possible way that he is in the rotation next year?
I think, and I tweeted this last night, I think it would be a shame and it would be a mistake if he's not given an opportunity to start next year.
The only thing we haven't seen is he's going 5 innings and that's it.
He threw 84. He threw 84 pitches, and it's last night. And the question is, would he be a 5-inning pitcher? But if he's a good 5-inning pitcher, that's still an asset.
That's a number 5 to me, right?
And again, the question you then get into is he more valuable as a number 5 starter, or is he more valuable as a high leverage bullpen arm? I don't know that I have the answer for that.
That's a great answer. Yeah.
I do think that he's pitched well enough to deserve an opportunity to be considered.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think that the next one up would be Adolis Garcia. He could join the team potentially sometime during the Houston series next week. After that, you might get Sam Haggerty. I think Sam is as close to an all or nothing thing. He's going to start a rehab assignment sometime this week. If that goes well, then he could be back sometime next week. If it doesn't go well, I think it's going to be a point where the Rangers pretty much have to shut him down because that ankle's just not going to respond. And there is some uncertainty about that. Danny Coulomb is going to throw on a rehab assignment sometime this week and could be activated by the weekend. That's a possibility. And then you get to Seager, and I think the most realistic, it sounds like, for Seager would be maybe the start of the Miami series, to start that last homestand of the year, give them the last 10 days of the season with this club. And I think that is about it on guys who would be ready potentially before the end of the season. It doesn't look like Marcus Semien will be ready until the postseason if the Rangers will make it that far. And it doesn't look like Nathan Eovaldi would be ready probably until the Rangers, at least advance a round or so in the postseason. And then the other guys that are on the injured list, John Gray, Evan Carter, Cody Bradford, and Josh Spores. They're all shut down for the year. They will not play postseason or not.
Yeah, and if you'd have told us before the season this is how they were going to go in personnel-wise into the last month or so of the season, you'd have said, well, then that's done. They're toast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you one last thing about the Rangers before we get out of this segment and move over and talk about colleges. So if Adolis comes back and you get more to a normal lineup, who are the young guys do you have to keep? Is it your boy Cody Freeman?
I mean, I think you've got I think Cody is probably safe going forward. Obviously, when you get the next position player you get back, probably Dustin Harris goes out. If you get Haggerty back, maybe Osuna is the guy, because he kind of, is Alejandro Osuna as a switch hitter. And then when you get Seager back, then you've got a decision to make. But there is a palpable difference with Cody Freeman in the clubhouse and on the field. To me, it's tangible. And I wrote about this off of Sunday's game. Look, the guy's hitting 211. It's not like he's crushing it, but somehow he seems to find his way into the middle of key situations and produces.
Yeah, he does do that. All right, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. We're going to move over now and talk about the colleges. Texas A&M is going to South Bend on Saturday. Sean McFarland will be there to cover that game for us. That'll be a big game for the Aggies. I would have felt better about their chances had Miami not already, beaten Notre Dame in their opener. And I just have a hard time believing that Notre Dame is going to get beat twice this early in the season. The Aggies have that Marcel Reed, their quarterback, has done a good job. He's progressed. He's throwing the ball better than he did last year. He's always had good wheels, so that gives them a chance. And they have the running game was better last week as well. They're not quite there yet, I don't think. So losing to Notre Dame on the road would not be a bad thing and not a deal killer, certainly for their playoff hopes. The SEC just isn't very good this year, Evan.
Well, that's what it's looked like. It hasn't had a great first 2 weeks. And my friends at SEC Shorts, the little comedy troupe on Instagram, had kind of played that off this week. They poked a
little
fun.
They do a great job, by the way. That stuff is hilarious. They're hilarious.
They poked a little bit of fun at Florida after losing to USF. I don't know if the SEC is down, Kevin.
It's down. Look, it's down. Look, Alabama's not what it was, and they weren't last year either. But you can really tell the difference without Nick Saban. They're just not the same team without him.
Yes. I mean, Kalen DeBoer his days are numbered. I think that LSU went on the road and beat Clemson, and that was a good win.
That was a good win.
We haven't seen Georgia play anybody yet, so I'm not sure what to make of Georgia just yet. I don't know what to make of A&M, quite frankly. No, you don't.
And you don't know what to make of Texas
right.
either. I will say that Arch Manning, it's San Jose State. Of course, he's going to look better. The thing I don't understand though, is, and he threw 4 touchdown passes and ran for another one. So I mean, what more do you want from the guy? But it is so much feast or famine with Arch so far. It's one of the long touchdown passes. It's the guy's wide open, and all he has to do is just lay it out there, and he does. And the guy has to come back and get it. But that's what you want him to do. If the guy's wide open, don't be trying to hit him on a dead run. Just throw it out there and let him catch it. Make sure you get that ball.
Did he wince after he threw it?
Did he what? Did he wince? Yeah. Well, that was That was the thing that came up was that at the press conference on Monday, the Texas press conference with Steve Sarkisian, as it was explained to me, one of the University of Texas students they let them in the press conferences as they should, and that's a good thing. And he asked one of the first questions, and the question was something along the lines of, it had been reported that Arch might be hurt. Maybe his shoulder is bothering him. And Sark just kind of snapped back at him and said, I don't know where you're getting these reports from. And then he talked about, because the reporter referred to a grimace when he threw. And then Sark made the crudest comment about, I don't know about you. I haven't seen you guys in the bathroom, and I guess that was referring to grimaces. And I don't know. I've heard a lot of weird comments in press conferences over my nearly 50 years in sports writing, and that's right up there. And I don't know, you as I explained to somebody when they were telling me about this yesterday, it's not the questions that should be questioned in these kind of situations. It's how you answer. It reveals something about your character. It reveals something about what you might be trying to hide. And when you have that kind of reaction like that Sark had to that question, which was if misguided, if he had said, I don't know where you're seeing that's been reported because it's not accurate, if it is being reported. That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to, come up with, these.
Yeah, but it's a student, and you can bully students more easily.
Yeah, that's right. And I've seen that before. No question about it.
Which is certainly unfortunate. And look, I mean, just to that whole answer, if I was going to the bathroom in front of TV cameras and 100,000 people, God forbid, you could critique that however you want. This is the guy that is at the center of your program, and if he looked uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, it's certainly a very viable question and required an answer. And Sark could just like you said, it's not that hard to answer these questions. It's not that hard to say, look, we've gotten no indication that he's hurt. We've gotten no feeling from him that he's uncomfortable. And so I just think any reports of him being hurt are inaccurate. And that's a completely fair answer. And you've defended your player. But to do that, you're just taking a shot because you can bully somebody, and it's not a good look for Sark. It just isn't.
No, not a good look. Well, I will say this: I find it hard to believe that his arm hurt. He's throwing the ball. He's throwing fastballs every time he throws. So if your arm's hurt, it seems to me you wouldn't be able to do that. Now I don't know about the look on his face when he's throwing the ball or not. I don't know about any of that. I do know this. I don't understand why they aren't trying to let him just drive the bus. Just let him drive the bus. This is a really talented team. Why is it that you're going out there and, man, you're just trying to light things up? And then because, when you're, of course, out at midfield, you can throw a 30, 40-yard pass. The Texas problems have been throughout Sark's tenure there at Texas in the red zone. They are very inefficient in the red zone, and that requires you to run in plays that are a little more intricate. I mean, that are a little more simple, where you're trying to just to move people, and that's what they need to be doing, and letting him do that.
We've been over this for 2 years. It certainly feels like Sark is living out his quarterback fantasies through his quarterbacks, and they don't run the ball, in my mind, as much as they could, and I think we talked about this with Kirk last week during the Ohio State game. I thought that based on what I saw, and clearly I wasn't hanging on every play the way you guys were, but from what I saw, it wasn't a game plan that was designed it was a game plan that was designed to potentially show off Arch Manning instead of letting him have success.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's the thing about we talk about in the NFL and about preseason games, and guys not getting to play, and Ty didn't get to play any in the preseason. Well, In college football, there is no preseason. You jump right into it. Your first real start, because I'm not going to count the two against Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State last year when you're coming off the bench. That's not the same thing. This is now you are the starting quarterback. There's a different set of expectations for you now that rather than being the backup quarterback coming in and playing because you have to. And you were playing at Ohio State. You're in the horseshoe. 105,000 people. So when you're asking a guy to do that, it seems to me I want to make this as simple for him as possible. Because look, the big benefit of him, and we saw that in that game in Ohio State, was that, and he rolls out, he is a danger to run. And that 15-yard run that he had at one point in the game was just a thing of beauty. And Quinn Ewers was never going to do that. So that alone is what he gives you that Quinn didn't. And to think that not only we're going to get that from him, but we're going to have him be this gunslinger, kind of throwing this. All of a sudden, he's throwing sidearm passes, and Sark explained that away by saying that, well, he was throwing the ball sidearm because he's not getting his feet correct. Well, okay, then right, work that out, get that right, because you're not going to be as accurate throwing that way. I wouldn't think. I had, other than seeing him last year, of course, I'd never seen the kid play at all. So I wasn't sure exactly what his style looked like, although he is throwing a lot of sidearm stuff now. So I don't know how that translates. I don't know if he's having trouble throwing the ball over the top, if that's because his arm hurts, or if because his footwork is just not good. I don't know what the situation is. But he's got another week here where he's not going to have to worry about it and get things right. They don't have anything going until they play Florida. And now, who knows how good Florida is?
Well, who knows if Billy Napier will even be at Florida at that point in time?
Well, I know. I will say this, and you can't you lose to them, but it's anytime I picked the USF to cover in that. It's a state rivalry. You're playing the big team in the state. You're going to be up for that, but you can't lose.
Oh, if you're USF, yeah, for sure. But you can't lose in the swamp to USF. I'm sorry. You can't.
No, you can't. You can't. But I didn't pick them to lose. I just picked them to, cover. So yeah, this is the Billy Napier story, though, right? It's just been a disaster. That's a real, problem for me, because I look at Florida much like I look at Texas. You are the biggest school, or at least the one with the most tradition in the state, in a state that produces a lot of really good players. Now, I know that Florida has, like Texas, that has a lot of competition for that talent in the state, and there are some really good programs. But Florida should be really good. Florida should be, to me, in my mind, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the SEC every year, because they have that natural talent base that Alabama doesn't have, and maybe even Georgia doesn't have. Only LSU has a better talent base in my mind than Florida does in the SEC.
I would take up for my home state here and say I think you're underestimating the talent from Georgia a little bit. But
that Georgia talent, they suck. There's no players in Georgia.
Okay.
No? No, they're good because it's got Atlanta. That's the great thing that Georgia has over the other teams in the South, is it has a major metropolitan area. Most of them don't. So that's a big advantage. So Georgia has really good players too.
I mean, I think, you talk about Louisiana per capita players. Yeah, it's the top, but I think Georgia is in the top 5.
Oh yeah. I would say for sure. But I'm just saying that's what Florida has, and for them not to be able to maximize that is really, and you're right. I don't know if Billy will make out the rest of the year. Of course, they gave him that extension, which is a huge mistake, and that is the mistake that these programs always make. If a coach is close to getting himself fired, and then he kind of turns things around at the last minute, the last thing you should do is reward that person with a contract extension, because it's just going to happen again. It happens time and time again in those situations.
Yeah, that's just panic.
It is panic. All right. Oh, and we didn't even mention the fact that SMU lost to Baylor, which was that's a bad loss. You can't be losing to an unranked team, even though I think that Baylor's pretty good. Their defense is not very good, and that's a problem for a guy like Dave Aranda, the head coach, who is calling plays on the defense. That's one of the reasons that you're even got hired, was because you're a great defensive coach, and they are struggling defensively. So I don't know why that is, but Sawyer Robertson right now is the best quarterback in the state. He is in 3 consecutive games, including last year's bowl game. He's thrown for over 400 yards in each of those games. He's really good. So they might be able to do something. It's going to be interesting in the Big 12 this year. I think TCU's got a shot to win it. I think Tech's got a good shot to win it. And I think that, Baylor might even have a shot to win it at this point. So there's not a lot happening outside the state in the Big 12. So that'll be interesting as it develops. All right, that's going to do it for our podcast this week. We thank you for coming in and listening. We will be back next week, and we'll have a little bit more. We'll know about all the teams we just talked about, including the Rangers, who will be early next week in a pivotal series against the Houston Astros at Dakin Park. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.